shit.
That's what I'm talking about.
Wait.
Okay, now, from the beginning.
So welcome everybody to our session on immersive media and sports. Give me a second here to fire up the slides. And we're joined by our friends from Intel Sports, and we're gonna have fun today, and we're gonna make this interactive and do a little Q&A later. I'm Tony Parisi, head of VR and AR brand solutions at Unity for the Unity Ads team, and I'm joined today by Kalpana Berman, who is product manager for virtual reality in Intel Sports, been doing that for about 10 years, and Ritesh, Kale, engineering director, and they can tell you about themselves. They each are gonna have a bit of a short presentation at some point soon, but mostly this is gonna be an interactive fireside chat among the four of us and then with you a little later. And finally, my colleague Bradley Weiers, who is the XR product manager at Unity. Okay, and so with that, I'd love Kalpana to come on up and tell us a bit about Intel Sports. Are you gonna sit there and do it? You've got the clicker? You ready to click? All right, let me launch the slide deck for you. Yeah. There we go. Is this the right one?
Yep, thanks.
All righty.
Thank you, Tony. Let's see if this actually works. All right. So you saw the video, and I wanted to just set up what Intel Sports is all about and give you a really broad level of our technologies. And then Ritesh will take it over later in the presentation with a little more detail of what we do. So I have a number for you guys, 39 billion. That is the forecasted North American sports market in 2019, and that only covers sponsorship and media rights, so it doesn't include things like tickets, merchandising, etc. So obviously we're dealing here with the really big business. And on top of that, it's been evolving over the years. So people have been starting to consume sports, starting with a newspaper, moving to the radio, moving to an HD TV, and now streaming it on personal devices. And our goal at Intel Sports is that we believe we're at the brink of the next change. We want to be the enabler of new immersive and personalized content to let users watch what they want, how they want it, when they want it, with whatever device they have on hand. Click. Okay. So here's a scenario that we're picturing, let's say 5 to 7 years from now. You're sitting on your couch, you pick up your VR glasses or AR glasses, instantly recognize you, and you're transported to this virtual sports world. Automatically, your fantasy team comes up, your favorite teams, your athletes, you get to choose the live game of your choice. You also see that a couple friends are already watching a game, so you decide to join them. You start chatting with them, bantering with them as if you were there, cheering on your team as if you're in the stadium from a suite-level suite. And then all of a sudden, you get an alert. Oh my God, Todd Gurley just made an amazing play. Let me go check out what he did. And I switch over to that, and I can actually now view the play from his perspective or anywhere I want. I could be the defender, I could be the field, I could see what the coaches are seeing, what the ref just saw, and really transport myself to anywhere I'm there. And this is really the idea of Intel Sports and the vision that we're envisioning going forward. Okay, so how are we enabling this to happen? Right now we have two core technologies. One called Intel TrueView, which you might have heard of before as 3D or replay, and Intel TrueVR, where both Ritesh and I are working on. So Intel TrueView is an end-to-end platform that really allows users to see any angle and perspective that I just described. At a very high level, it consists of 5K camera arrays installed on stadiums that then take all the data and reconstructs a volumetric video, a 3D video essentially, and serves it up to devices or broadcasters so that you really have control of what you want to see, infinite camera paths. Intel TrueVR is a little bit more of a flexible solution, which allows the users to switch from fixed points of view. And I'm going to talk for a second a little more on Intel TrueVR and then switch it over. Okay. So how Intel TrueVR works right now is we have a set of stereoscopic camera pods that we quickly actually put into any sporting event and field, and then combine that with the backend technology where we take all those streams and feed it to any kind of device, actually, the web, mobile devices, as well as headsets. We also enable our broadcasters and partners, as well as developers, to actually build the apps. And so we have a series of white label applications and SDKs, which we are currently building out so that a user has this experience on a headset or these other devices. And so where we are today, just as an overview, so for TrueVR, you can actually go get the apps, various apps depending on our partnership, in the Oculus Store and Daydream, depending on our partnership again. So for example, our NCAA March Madness VR app is out right now. Go check it out. It's awesome with a lot of live games. You could go check out NBA and TNT, PGA Tour, et cetera. And these are some of the awesome partners that we've been working with over the past year. And at this point, that was just a quick overview. I think we're going to start the Q&A portion, Tony.
Yeah, so this is amazing. I love this idea. I love the content we've already been talking about. Help me out here. How does Intel get into something like this? You guys are a chip company. Take me through the logic of that, going from that to basically providing services that reach end consumers like this around rich media like VR, and all the things you're going to be talking about with Ritesh here. How does that work? I mean, what's the genesis of the project? How did this come to be?
Sure. So why Intel? As you guys have known, Intel has been traditionally a PC computing company. But as you've probably seen over the last, I'd say, couple of years, we're really transforming ourselves into a data company, which means we want to be the power or the enabler behind the cloud and all the devices that connect to that cloud. Now, as you've probably seen in the news, we've been investing in a lot of areas like autonomous driving, drones, and of course, sports. And they all have one common theme. We think all these areas and industries are going to undergo radical shifts, both from the consumer and the business landscape. And they use up a lot of data to actually have a successful experience. So just as an example, for TrueVR, one of the pods that we set up in the stadium, one pod, which has 6 camera lenses, produces 1 terabyte of data per hour. We typically have anywhere from 6 to 10 pods in any event. That number is 1 terabyte per minute for Intel TrueView technology from all the cameras at an event. So as you can see, the amount of compute that's required to actually enable these experiences is humongous. And at the end of the day, we think Intel is, with its assets and technology know-how, is going to be really well positioned to be the power behind these amazing experiences.
So business model-wise, then, does that mean that you're effectively the Intel inside of these new media types? I mean, are you going direct to consumer? Are you white labeling this? How does this actually work as a business?
Yeah, good question. We are not going direct to consumer. We're still seeking to be, let's say, the Intel inside or the enabler. And we're working really closely with our partners right now, which are the broadcasters, the leagues, people who currently have the rights to the games, to enable them to have experiences. We are the creator of this immersive content, and right now we're trying to enable them by creating white label apps and SDKs that showcase the experience, but we actually allow them to brand and directly engage with the user. So as I said before, for example, you're going to see an NBA and TNT VR app, you're not going to see Intel app. And so our model is really to work closely with those partnerships. And as we go down the line, we actually really want to spur the ecosystem and developers such as you guys to actually develop on top of the plugins and SDKs that we'll be building. Our core competency is going to be around the creation of that immersive media content, and we want to leave the experts, the media, the broadcasters, the developers, to really innovate on top of that experience, and that's our goal.
Got it. I'm going to get a little bit personal, if you don't mind. So sure. 10 years at Intel, and I'm thinking, okay, career product person, probably just stepped into this, took it over, someone else figured it out. Not true, right? We were talking about this earlier, like, you actually had some personal involvement in getting this business going, right? Sort
of, yeah. So Intel Sports has been around, I'd say, roughly 1.5 years, and I was actually part of it before it became Intel Sports. I was part of a group called the Intel Experiences Group, and one of our charters was really to look at what experiences are going to be really different 5 to 10 years right now, and how computing is going to evolve to meet those needs. And naturally, one of the areas that we delved into was entertainment. And when you look at the entertainment business, gaming, sports, media were some very natural areas. Now, Intel and gaming, pretty huge bucket of people working on things already. Sports was new for us. So we decided to delve further into it, decided that it would be a great business to get into it. I was actually part of the due diligence team that ended up buying VR, which is now TrueVR, and Ritesh was part of. And as soon as we started the org, I jumped on as product manager on the front end for working hand in hand with engineering and UX and QA development for the VR apps since then. So.
Got it, yes, you've been here pretty much from the ground floor on this project.
I have.
That's great, and that's a perfect segue, actually. So we want to have Ritesh talk a little bit about deeper into the technology. Let me just queue up another slide deck for you, and then you can fire that away. Here we go. This would be not this one. The one that says Ritesh. I'm getting better at this. All right.
All right, thank you, Tony. So, there we go. All righty. So what do we want to create as a true sports experience? The goal is twofold. One is to take the user and make them experience as if they are virtually there at a sporting event, right? And then take the next step where you're giving them the access to walk around the field, walk around the stadium, and experience the action from any point of view. So today, the way we do it is using a fixed point VR solution, which is TrueVR, where we enable the users to go and watch the action from multiple vantage points in the venue. And in the future, we are building this TrueView technology, which is going to let you do that second thing that I mentioned, which truly walk around the arena and watch the action from wherever you want. So in addition to doing this, we are also making this experience much more richer than just going and watching the game at an arena. Your experience is you can get stats and scores and any kind of rich data that you can think of in addition to watching the game live, right? So that's the idea, is to truly transform the experience of being there and enhance it beyond just physically being there. It's more than that. So as I mentioned, these are the two technologies that we are working with and that make this happen. So TrueVR is the fixed point virtual reality system. And I'm going to go into the details of each one of these and talk about some of the challenges, some of the technology hurdles that we had to overcome to make these happen. This doesn't click. Okay. So let's talk about Intel TrueVR first. So the TrueVR experience is basically a highly immersive VR experience that makes you feel as if you're right there. And the way we make it happen is it starts from a camera system that we have created, which lets you watch the action as if your eyes are there, right? I mean, the way the camera is created is it is made of multiple stereoscopic pairs in every single direction that you can look at. So you have, and these stereoscopic pairs are positioned in such a way that they are mimicking your eyes in every direction. And then we have a whole bunch of processing that happens after we capture the images from each of these sensors, and you can see one of those cameras right there. So the processing is actually doing a seamless stitch between each of these images and giving you an experience as if you're watching from your own natural eyes. Right? So that's the idea behind capturing the environment in a true stereoscopic way. Now this obviously involves real-time processing because we want to enable live experiences. So the stitching has to be real-time, the processing has to be real-time, and it is enabled by a whole bunch of high processing compute that we bring to the table. And who can do better processing than Intel, right?
So actually, I would ask you a couple of
Sure.
questions there. So, and by mimicking your eyes and by stereoscopy, you mean, actually having perceived depth.
Yes, absolutely.
Right, when you're looking around. And something that kind of piqued my interest there when you say all the stitching and stuff at real time, is that kind of, that seems like it'd be fairly hard to do, right? And especially sending it all up and be able to switch between cameras?
Absolutely. So just to give you an example, if you want to get a good VR experience, it has to be, we all know that it has to be at least 60 frames a second. That means the video that we create has to be 60 frames per second. What this means is that for every frame, we have 16.67 milliseconds to process and stitch that image. And that requires a lot of compute. Not because these are fairly sophisticated algorithms that are trying to figure out between one image and the other image, what are the areas that are common? How are we going to stitch them to make a seamless image in between, right? And to do that within that time frame of 16.67 milliseconds that you have to basically keep up with the real-time rate is fairly challenging. And that requires a lot of optimization, a lot of very core algorithms that are running to make that happen. And that's something that we have built over the years to enable that live experience.
So I was going to ask you that. So you had to write all your own algorithms for this. And is it a combination of hardware and software that really lets you hit this, or is it mostly on the software angle?
It's kind of a combination of the two. Intel has a lot of hardware-based compute that we can throw off at it, but then there are a lot of software algorithms that are highly optimized to make this happen as well.
Okay, interesting.
Yep. So that's one part of the problem, right? Where we have captured these environments in true stereoscopy, and then we go about and make these applications to consume these VR streams. And these are not regular internet streams, right? You have to have a fairly high resolution and fidelity in these streams to get a good VR experience. So that's where the challenges lie, where how do you stream this much amount of data? If you dumb it down, can you still get a good experience at the other end? And by dumbing it down, I'm talking about compression, loss in resolution, and so on and so forth. So those are the kind of challenges that we deal with. And as the technology is getting better, as the devices are getting better, as the bandwidths are getting better, the experiences are also going to improve.
So as you came into all this, did you look right at the beginning and say, like, okay, we understand that these are going to be the challenges? Or did you kind of just go and hit a point and realize, oh, shit, this is, we're going to have this huge, this next big thing, right?
Yes.
And then kind of work your ways through that?
So the idea always has been, I mean, since the inception, and I've been part of this for the last 7-8 years now, right? Building this technology, and I was part of the startup that was acquired by Intel to create the Intel TrueVR technology. So since the beginning, the idea has always been to capture the environments in as realistic fashion as possible. So just to give you an example, this is kind of interesting because 6 years back, when we were a part of this startup and pitching this idea to investors, we were actually carrying around a 3D TV with us to show the experience, right? Because it was still because we were capturing everything in true stereo, right? Left eye, right eye separately. So we had people put on these glasses and 3D. And as soon as Oculus came along, we knew that we had the data that was captured in true stereoscopy, which was easily going to port to this new world of virtual reality that was being that was becoming hot, right?
So I can imagine this moment in time where you're wheeling up the stereo TV and no one wants to see it anymore because everyone's like, does it run in an Oculus Rift? That's all I care about, right?
Exactly.
So there's this like overnight shift, I bet,
Yep,
right?
absolutely.
I remember a couple years ago that exactly happening.
But I mean, when you ask the question, the idea always has been to capture the environments in as realistic fashion as possible and kind of mimic the human eye and the human head.
Yeah.
as best as you can, right?
So from an engineering perspective, it probably requires quite a bit of optimism, I imagine, right? I mean, in terms of like, you know that the goal's out here.
Yes.
But so when you're talking about all these different challenges with this technology in particular, what was the one you'd say would, like, what aspect of it took the longest to figure out or took the most effort?
I would think the real-time stitching is something that was the longest lead time, because we were able to capture these and post-process them. You take your own sweet time, let the stitcher run as long as it wants, figure out the differences between the images, and you get a really nice stitch where you can barely figure out that these are two separate images. But when you have to do this in real time, that's when you have to really start thinking about where your optimizations lie, how can you use the hardware to the best of its capabilities to your advantage, and write and rewrite your algorithms to get the best, essentially, I mean, if you cannot do this real time, then the whole point is moot, right? I mean, you cannot have live experiences. So
Right.
that is always the goal. How you get there is, there are multiple paths that you have to try. Optimization, better hardware, and let the technology evolve. The hardware get better, right? Sometimes you just have to wait.
Okay, so I could probably ask you questions about that for a while, but
Sure.
I'll let you continue for a
Yeah.
while.
So this is, I think we've talked quite a bit about the TrueVR experience. So today what we do is we put anywhere from 6 to 8 of such pods that you're seeing here in an arena. And we capture the experience from each of these locations and stream all these different angles to the end user. So the users can switch from one angle to the other and get the experience from any of those angles. And in addition to that, we have taken the cue from television broadcasters, where we have a producer and director at the venue switching between these cameras to give you a produced feed, so that you never miss the action just because you were on the wrong camera. Right. So you can this is something that we call the VR cast, and you can just latch onto the VR cast, sit back. It's the lean back mode, and you just watch the action, and the cameras are changing for you. But you still get the full sense of depth, full realism of being there at the venue.
So this could be my bias, just working at Unity, but you talk about delivering to the end user. What's in between this technology and the user in terms of the application layer? Are you planning on talking about that?
So today we build all our applications using Unity, right? So Unity has been really helpful for us to be able to port these experiences to multiple platforms. And Unity has been great at kind of providing the support for every new VR platform that comes along. Windows Mixed Reality is a great example, which just came out a few months back, and we already have support on Unity to create an experience on Windows Mixed Reality. Cool. So what this helps us do is use the same business logic, use the same setup that we have, use the same navigation and the environments that we create, but very quickly port to a Oculus Gear VR or a Daydream or Windows Mixed Reality. So that it helps us do that.
Excellent.
And that's been a great tool for us to use.
So as a developer, I might at some point be able to actually access, or I will be able to access this through Unity and actually make my NBA app or something.
That is the idea. Yes.
Okay, cool.
What we want to do is not build the apps, the end user apps, but provide the technology that helps developers, our partners, create these experiences themselves, right? We don't want to be defining the final experience. What we want to do is create the technology that lets you define that experience.
Awesome.
Yep. So this is a quick, I already talked about this, but this is a quick snapshot of how it goes through. I mean, we are capturing from multiple sensors in a single pod, and then we stitch and transcode. We distribute it over the cloud, and we have end user apps. So we already talked about most of these things, but this kind of pictorially shows you the different stages that are involved in kind of making this work. So let's talk about our other technology, which is Intel TrueView. So this is a slightly different technology from what we have at Intel TrueVR. The idea here is So the way I'd like to describe it is Intel TrueVR is something that is looking, I mean, the cameras are looking inside out, whereas in TrueView, all the cameras that we have are looking outside in. So we have a whole bunch of cameras, an array of cameras installed all across the arena or the stadium, and each one of them is looking at the action from a slightly different angle, right? And you must have seen some of the experiences created by the Intel TrueVR technology in like a Super Bowl where the broadcasters freeze the action and are flying around the action, and that is created using the Intel TrueVR technology. So the basis of this is essentially to be able to create a full volumetric scene from each of the camera images that have been captured all across the arena. And this actually involves a lot more processing than what is needed for the Intel TrueVR, making the Intel TrueVR experience. So, of course, this is not real time today. That's where we want to go in the future. But what we are able to do is create this volumetric data, which today is a single frame or a few frames. And as the processing gets better, as we optimize the algorithms, it will turn into volumetric video.
So I could have the entire sports arena all volumetric and playing through the entire game.
Exactly. That's the idea.
That sounds awesome.
That's the idea. So the goal is to, as it says here, right, to break free from a fixed perspective. You want to capture the entire action in a volumetric fashion, so that you give the users the full freedom to move around wherever they want to go. So the kind of experiences that we are enabling using this technology today is, think of a football game going on, and you are able to use this volumetric data that you have captured and say, I want to go and look at it. I want to fly the camera to the quarterback's point of view. I want to see the action from what the quarterback was looking at, or from what the receiver was looking at, or why did the referee make this wrong call, right? Because the referee just saw this part of the action. So you can fly the camera to any of these locations because you have the full volumetric data in front of you, and you're essentially just flying. Now it's a matter of where do you want to go. This kind of technology again is going to create completely different experiences that we have not thought of before. And that's where the challenge lies. Because we feel that if you allow the user to just freely navigate in this space anywhere they want to go, it's probably going to be a very dizzying experience, right? You don't know where the action is, you don't know where you're going. So how do you create experiences with this where you have the power of going anywhere? How do you create truly meaningful experiences, truly rich experiences that are going to show you things that you otherwise miss, but at the same time not completely disorient you? So that is going to be one of the challenges as this technology evolves and comes along.
I was just going to say that, other than the engineering challenges of dealing with the data and optimizations of real time, I think one of the big challenges that we're facing constantly is defining what's the correct user experience. Because there's a huge balance of letting a user control but not be completely overwhelmed, and how much interactivity you can have. Because imagine infinite amount of camera paths defined for you and you're an end user, and you are like, okay, now I'm upside down looking at the field from the 50-yard line, like, how do I get back down? So I think it's been awesome, actually. It's been fun working with the user experience team on experimenting with, hey, what is the actual ideal experience and how much control do we want to do? Like, do we want to have, for example, switch to quarterback mode, switch to bird's eye view, switch to ref mode? Or do we want to have advanced mode where you get into super, any path that you want? And I'd say, other than kind of from an engineering point of view, providing the correct amount of interactivity so that a user is not overwhelmed. Because at the end of the day, a sports game is also a story, and it's the emotion of it, et cetera. And all that stuff still matters as you're watching. So balancing that production, the live event, and the game while giving the user of interactivity has been a fun challenge, I would say.
Right.
I've got a kind of even basic question around that too, which is where do you put the cameras? I mean, what kind of environments have you been capturing so far with TrueView? You know, what sort of sporting events? And what are some typical setups for where you're going to put these cameras to not be in the way of the athletes and so on? Can you tell us some stories about that?
Sure, and I think this is where a couple differences come between TrueView and TrueVR. So with TrueView, they're actually permanently installed anywhere, say between 30 and 50 cameras. So if you look at an NFL stadium, NFL is somebody we have a partnership with, they're installed on the second or third tier level all around in a ring. On the stadiums. We also have a partnership with La Liga, and same with the soccer stadiums. So predominantly what we've been capturing with TrueView has been basketball, football, and soccer. Now TrueVR, I think because of the flexibility of kind of the pods you saw a pod on the court, we've captured in all kinds of environments. We've done basketball, golf, and just recently we finished the Winter Olympics, where we had people ski up and put pods in negative degree weather, capturing over 30 events, actually, live in VOD, both indoor curling to downhill skiing, half pipe, et cetera. And that's kind of the flexibility that I think the combination of the two technologies offer you. When you have an outdoor sport, where are you going to install 50 permanent cameras versus having pods that you can come within a day, set up in really harsh conditions, and get an experience with some level of interactivity. And it's been cool dealing with those challenges of the different environments.
Now, I've heard, and I think we can talk about this publicly, that you've opened a studio in LA. Is that right?
That's right.
What can we say about that? So that's a fixed location, place that you're going to bring people into to do capture things, right? So what sort of things are happening?
That's right. I mean, I think other than live events, we realize that TrueView can give content creators for any kind of content an awesome ability to make volumetric video for whatever format they want, for whether that's advertisement or pieces of content that they want. So we're opening up the studio to select partners right now, both in the sports and entertainment business, to utilize the studio how they want to create really, really compelling, enriching content.
But I mean, how big is it big enough to put a basketball game in it? Is it like stadium size? How big is this studio?
You can fit half a football field.
Half a football field, correct.
Yep.
Wow. So you could do a basketball game in there.
Yes,
You
absolutely.
could.
Wow.
So actually, that's the next thing I was going to ask about. I know it's called, Intel Sports, but like I'm thinking there's got to be so many cool things like live performance, but like what's a good example? I'm thinking like maybe like a stage show, someone doing that sort of thing, right? And having concert halls that are actually mounted with these things and letting you walk around on stage.
Absolutely.
For sure.
So we before we got acquired by Intel, we have done some concerts, and we were also looking at security as a application for this, right? Because you're capturing everything around you. So, but definitely the applications are much beyond sports for sure. The focus is on sports right now because we are part of Intel Sports. That's where we see the market and the ability for us to create technologies that will be applied immediately. So that's where we are focusing today, but that does not restrict the technology itself to be used in other areas.
So with this technology, would you say that the biggest challenge you're hitting right now is just in terms of like, I mean, there's got to be tons, but is just in the how much data there is?
That is definitely one of the biggest challenges. There are other challenges in terms of, as we all mentioned, right? The user experience itself is still being defined. What is the user experience that is truly going to become mainstream? And how do you balance the experience that you're providing with the end user devices and their limitations and the bandwidths that we can get today? Because what you don't want is users to be driven away because of a bad experience, right? And that's the challenge. That's the biggest challenge, that you do want to provide an experience. There are limitations and challenges in terms of bandwidth, and the processors on mobile devices, they are getting better and better as each generation comes along, but that is definitely one of the challenges that we have to overcome. We are capturing much more data than we are actually delivering to the clients today. We have to dumb it down, we have to compress it, we have to scale it down in terms of resolution, and if we did not have that restriction, it would be a much better experience that we can give today as compared to what we are doing, right? So those are as the ecosystem evolves, as the devices get better, as the head-mounted displays get better pixel densities, and as the bandwidths increase in terms of delivering this content to the end users, these experiences will get better in the future for sure.
Another challenge kind of related to that is the problem that the comparison of what people are comparing that experience. So take your sports broadcast on TV. Yeah. It's beautiful. I mean, that's the whole reason you buy a 4K or TV. Yeah. It's one of the best produced events live events still out there with essentially the biggest live ratings in cable business is all, if you look at the top 10 to 15, they're all sporting events. And the bar for the user is me sitting on a couch with all my friends watching an amazingly crisp, beautifully produced a game. And now it's okay, how do we not only hit that min bar, but provide additional value to enhance that experience even further while on a headset or on your device? And it's, I think we're at the very beginning stages of experimenting with that, and we have a lot of room to grow, but we do strongly believe that with immersive media that you're going to get something even better or beyond that you can get with TV to enhance that experience. We won't ever replace it, of course, fully, but something that complements it at the same time.
Awesome. We've got just a couple of minutes. Before we go to Q&A, I'd like the two of you to play it forward 3 or 4 years from now. We've got these two technologies, TrueView, TrueVR. Do you see those sort of coming together at some point into one product offering or something that consumers or your developers really don't care about the difference, becomes one continuum of functionality? And where do you see that landing in terms of devices, in terms of where it's being played and shown, and in terms of the different markets that Bradley was asking about, does it go beyond sports and all that? So vision of the future, the two of you for the next couple of minutes, then we're going to do some Q&A.
Sure, so the vision of the future. I think from an end user perspective, for sure, those products are going to come together. I mean, from an end user perspective, you should be agnostic of what the technology name, honestly, even where it came from or even is. All I want is an amazing, interactive, immersive, social, personalized sports experience, no matter what capture technology was used. So to that end, we are starting to work together to define what we're going to call joint user experiences with our customer that utilize both technologies. And I think eventually, from a developer point of view, we will, down the road, offer plugins and SDKs that's agnostic of kind of the technology. Now, on the back end and capture, maybe Ritesh can comment a little bit, but I don't think there'll be much joining on that end.
We are taking some baby steps in terms of getting the two technologies together. Think of you watching, let's say, a basketball game or a football game that you're watching using the TrueVR technology, where you are immersed in the action and suddenly a great play happens, right? Where there was a great catch, and there is an indication in your experience where it says a TrueView highlight or a TrueView angle is available for that particular action. Right, yeah. So you snap into that, and you're able to look at this action from all different points of view. Yes, it's a frozen frame. It's just one single frame, but it was that epic moment when that great play happened. And those are the kind of experiences that we are starting to bring about. In the future, we see this moving on from a single frame to multiple frames. So you'll be able to see the action as the video is playing in the volumetric video. So that's where we see the two technologies coming together. Each one of them has its own place. As Kalpana mentioned, TrueVR gives us the flexibility to put it in multiple locations where you don't have a permanent installation. But we definitely see both the technologies coming together to create these awesome experiences.
And to your question on devices, we're definitely about providing an experience to varying degrees of interactivity and immersiveness. Because basically, we know people consume content in very different contexts and scenarios. We want to be able to offer some level of activity both on a mobile device, whether you're sitting at a bar out and you're just with your friends on a phone, headset, AR glasses, pretty much anything that's coming up in the future, PCs. So we do want to, one of the goals is experiencing the content how you want, but wherever you want. So that is one of the goals that we have, is to continue offering kind of this range of interactivity and immersive experiences across most devices that you have.
And I think Ritesh touched on this. It's going to go far beyond sports. If you have your wildest dreams come true, right? I mean, sports is the focus for now, but.
Yep. For sure. I think entertainment, music is kind of a pretty obvious one, and there's definitely a lot of people interested in the technology from the music industry. So yeah, down the road I could picture us. I think, kind of like Ritesh said, we're focusing on sports, trying to do that well, learning about it, and eventually, hopefully, expand out that to different industries.
Yep.
Ritesh, just from talking to you before, you know, getting to know you a little bit, like I know you have some big dreams just personally in terms of this volumetric technology in general, right? Like as we move out just from like, you know, talking about, you know, these particular products.
Yep. So,
right? Like,
yeah, I mean, when you dream, you should dream big, right? So think of the experience that we have today, right? We are focusing on sports. We are delivering VR experiences. But today the experiences are pretty isolating, and sports experience is a very social thing, right? So how do you bring the social back into these experiences? And if you just fast forward, I don't know how many years into the future, but think of this volumetric experience coming about using the TrueView technology. And we keep working and optimizing this technology to get the best fidelity and the best quality experience that you can. You have the full volumetric video. Let's say you have a bunch of friends and you're playing that video on your coffee table. And all of you are gathered around and cheering your team or your player or your favorite player. And it's essentially being just played on your coffee table because you have not only the display technology to create those holograms, but also the data now that we've captured using TrueView to enable those kind of experiences. That's where we kind of dream of making these things happen. So yeah.
That is awesome.
Yep.
Thank you so much, Ritesh and Kalpana. We have time for a few questions if folks are interested. We can also go offline and you can grab people afterwards. If anyone does have questions, just stand up and we'll repeat the question for you. So, yeah. Unless we have a mic here. Do we have a mic here? No, yeah, so go ahead and then we'll repeat.
Kind of curious about some of the success metrics that you use for some of the partners, like for Intel, and for some of your partnerships with NBA, La Liga, maybe PGA, how they look at that today and what that might look like in the future to determine what the picture of success looks like for Intel.
Sure, great question.
Let's repeat it, please.
So the question was, what's deemed success and what kind of metrics we're talking about with our partners, and what does it look like now and in the future? So I think everybody currently acknowledges that we are in an innovative new state, and we're lucky that we have a lot of partners that want to experiment with us in this short stage. I'd say they're all very rigorously, a little bit to my surprise, looking at kind of some of the standard metrics that most other apps do. So daily active users, retention, how much time are you in a headset compared to your regular clips? We're doing all kinds of comparisons like that. You know, at the end of the day, monetization models come in play in terms of ads and sponsorship. So for there are partnerships and events we've done that have had sponsorship in this. So obviously, the amount of dollars you bring in is going to be a metric, and that'll grow in importance as time goes on. I'd say right now they've been mostly, rather than reach, most of them have been focused on the engagement. So proving out that model. So okay, if it's been, you know, a smaller set of users in the HMD, but like the fact that they're spending more time in there and the amount of engagement and immersiveness they have in a headset versus a phone and a TV, I think that's the type of metrics that they've been really concentrating on.
Nice.
Yeah.
Great answer.
Sure.
And repeat the question.
Yeah, I mean, training, so the question is, have you looked at training as an application for the technology? Absolutely. Especially the VR technology is something that some of the teams have actually used for capturing their drills and their practice sessions and replaying them in the VR environment to essentially get some feedback on what could be done better and whatnot. So absolutely, we do see that, but having said that, that's not something that we are actively pursuing as a product. But there are, as we said, there are applications beyond just entertainment and sports that can definitely be conceived of.
And I think the original kind of four that we actually talked about originally were there's the fan, the athlete from training, and then there's officiating, so refs and how they can use this technology. And then there's the broadcasters kind of for their traditional models. And as Ritesh said, we've chosen to focus in on the fan. We think that's frankly one of the biggest potential areas. And maybe eventually we'll move to the other ones, but for the sake of focus and executing really well, we decided to hone in on a target market and even honing in further within that fan, but yeah.
Repeat the question.
So who are we I'm trying to get clarity in the question. Who are we partnering with to create more content outside of sports, basically? I'd say in the foreseeable future, just sports, definitely for the next few years. I think the entertainment area, though, is pretty much like, if we were to move outside, that'd be the very first area. So music, concerts, shows. We have done things before with the Critics' Choice, Project Runway, some concerts, and if we were to go further, that would probably be the area that we would move into. And frankly, right now, I mean, our target has quite simply been the leagues and broadcasters, and in particular, North America and Europe right now. That's who we've been focused on.
Okay, last question.
So I'm assuming that you guys are already capable of recording these volumetric videos of games. I'm wondering if you're doing any kind of partnership to determine kind of what's the future of filmmaking for these events. Because you can basically define what's the perfect way to view a game. You have the power to basically assess that and translate it to viewers. So I'm wondering if you're using machine learning or kind of how are you getting to that? Because that feels like it could be really good for this. Maybe the perfect view game.
Right. So the question is, if I'm understanding it right, how are we using the data that we've captured with this volumetric technology and using other technologies like machine learning to harness or to get the story beyond what we are seeing. Today, our focus is essentially to be able to capture the data. We are not necessarily applying all these other artificial intelligence and machine learning technologies to the data that we've captured, but that does not stop us from doing it. We feel there is still a lot of room for us to improve on in just the capture itself. So that's the focus today. We've obviously started thinking on using these on the data that we capture, but there is nothing concrete that has come out yet.
And I think one of the major reasons for that is with TrueView, we don't have the real-time capability yet. So the content comes after. And with the sports consumption, sports consumption goes up and down within 24 hours. So like the longevity of a highlight in terms of number of users who go. There's live, and then it takes a severe dip after 24 hours. So our focus has been really getting real-time, high-quality video. And then, as you very well pointed out, I think the amount of things you could do in terms of studying that from different angles, helping the production broadcasters in real time, getting even more data on players, frankly. You could do infinite amount of things, but down the road.
Yeah, yeah, and I definitely see that this is, even though our focus today is to create live experiences, this is some data that will be very valuable to teams, leagues, who, it doesn't have to be real time, just captured data for them to analyze and use these technologies on top of the data that is captured. That's definitely something that has potential value, but we haven't started harnessing that yet. Yeah.
Okay, great. Look, we're out of time. Thank you so much. And can we have a round of applause for our guests from Intel, Kalpana and Ritesh? Thanks. That was great, really enlightening.